The text message glowed in the pre-dawn light, each word a shard of ice driven into my heart. "You're too poor for my wedding," it read, the casual cruelty of it stealing my breath. I stared at the words, rereading them, hoping I was misinterpreting. But there it was, stark and unmistakable. My own sister, the one I had always protected, now dismissing me with such callousness. The world tilted on its axis, the foundations of my family crumbling before my eyes. If you have a sister, or someone you consider like a sister, who's always been there for you, subscribe now. From the moment we were little, it was always Maya and Camilla against the world. Our parents worked tirelessly, often holding down multiple jobs to make ends meet. Money was always tight, but love was abundant. I remember Christmases where the gifts were small, but the joy was immense, fueled by our parents' unwavering dedication to our happiness. As we grew older, I took on extra jobs, babysitting, tutoring, anything to ease the financial burden on our family and to ensure Maya had every opportunity. I always believed in her, saw her potential, and wanted to pave the way for her success, even if it meant sacrificing my own dreams. When Maya announced her engagement to Richard, a wealthy businessman from a prominent family, I was genuinely thrilled for her. He seemed to adore her, and I hoped he would give her the life she deserved, a life far removed from the struggles we had known. I even offered to contribute financially to the wedding, knowing that their families would likely handle most of the expenses. They brushed it off initially, but I insisted, secretly diverting funds from my own savings, determined to help make her day unforgettable. Over the months, I transferred a total of $85,000, a sum that represented years of careful saving and sacrifice. I never breathed a word of it to anyone, not even my closest friends. It was a gift from my heart, a symbol of my unwavering love and support for my sister. The wedding preparations were elaborate, a whirlwind of designer dresses, extravagant floral arrangements, and a guest list that read like a who's who of the city's elite. I happily participated in all the festivities, attending bridal showers, luncheons, and dress fittings, never suspecting the darkness that was brewing beneath the surface. Richard's family, while polite, always treated me with a certain condescension, their subtle jabs about my humble background grating on my nerves. But I brushed it off, attributing it to their privileged upbringing and focusing on Maya's happiness. The person I trusted most was one of them. Maya had started to change. The excitement of the wedding seemed to have warped her, turning her into someone I barely recognized. She became increasingly distant, her conversations filled with talk of designer brands, exclusive social events, and the importance of maintaining a certain image.
The bond we had shared for so long seemed to be fraying, replaced by a coldness that chilled me to the bone. I tried to talk to her, to remind her of our shared history, of the values our parents had instilled in us, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. She would simply brush me off, telling me that I didn't understand, that things were different now. The message hung in the air, a digital slap that stung far worse than any physical blow. Sleep evaded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the words would flash before me, each syllable a fresh wound. I tossed and turned, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, stealing my breath. How could she? How could the girl I had raised, the sister I had sacrificed everything for, discard me so casually? The $85,000 I had poured into her wedding felt like salt in the wound, a testament to my foolishness, my blind love. I had willingly emptied my savings, believing I was contributing to her happiness, only to be told that I wasn't good enough to witness it. I tried to rationalize it, to find some explanation, some misunderstanding that could soften the blow. Maybe her phone had been hacked. Maybe it was a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew the truth. The message was a reflection of the person she had become, a stranger hidden beneath the familiar face of my sister. Days turned into weeks, each one a slow, agonizing march towards the wedding. I replayed every interaction with Maya, searching for clues, for any indication of the resentment that had been festering beneath the surface. The condescending remarks from Richard's family now seemed less like innocent jabs and more like calculated attacks designed to undermine me, to make me feel inadequate. And Maya had stood by, silent, complicit in their cruelty. I attempted to talk to her again, choosing my words carefully, trying to bridge the gap that had formed between us. I reminded her of our childhood, of the sacrifices we had made for each other, of the unwavering bond that had always connected us. But she remained unmoved, her eyes cold and distant. "You don't understand," she repeated, her voice devoid of emotion. "Things are different now. I have a certain image to maintain." Image. That was all that mattered to her now. Not family, not loyalty, not the love we had shared for so long. Just image. I tried to explain to her the hurt and the injustice, how much I had sacrificed, but she simply didn't care. Her mind was made up. "Please don't call me again until after the wedding," she said, her voice sharp and dismissive. "I don't want any drama." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the deafening silence of my shattered illusions. The pain was unbearable, a constant ache in my chest. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in a sea of disappointment and regret. Sleepless nights became the norm, filled with endless replays of memories, both good and bad.
I questioned everything, wondering if I had somehow failed her, if I had somehow contributed to her transformation. But the truth was, I had done nothing wrong. I had only loved her, supported her, and believed in her. And in return, she had broken my heart. As the wedding day drew nearer, I made a decision. I would not let her see me broken. I would not give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply she had wounded me. I would attend the wedding, but not as the poor, pathetic sister she had dismissed. I would go as someone else entirely, someone who held a secret, someone who was about to turn her perfect world upside down. The rage started to build, a cold, simmering anger that fueled my determination. I said nothing. They thought I was done, but I was counting every second. The day they betrayed me was the day revenge was born. The days leading up to the wedding became a blur of sleepless nights and silent tears. I barely ate, the knot in my stomach a constant reminder of Maya's betrayal. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, the walls closing in on me, suffocating me with memories of happier times. I replayed our childhood in my mind, searching for answers, for the moment when our paths diverged, when the sister I knew and loved had transformed into this cold, calculating stranger. Had I been blind? Had I missed the subtle signs of her growing resentment, her yearning for a life I couldn't provide? Or was this simply the inevitable consequence of her newfound wealth and status, a shedding of the past in favor of a more glamorous future? The questions swirled in my mind, offering no solace, only deepening the ache in my heart. I considered not going to the wedding. The thought of facing Maya, of witnessing her happiness with Richard, filled me with a sense of dread. But I knew that staying away would be a sign of weakness, an admission that she had won, and I refused to give her that satisfaction. So I forced myself to prepare, to find a dress, to arrange my hair, to put on a mask of normalcy that concealed the turmoil within. But as I stood before the mirror, staring at my reflection, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were hollow, her face drawn, her spirit broken. Was this who I had become? A victim? A pushover? Someone who could be discarded and forgotten without a second thought? The thought ignited a spark of defiance within me, a refusal to be defined by Maya's cruelty. I would not let her break me. I would not let her steal my joy. I would attend the wedding, not as a broken, pathetic sister, but as a force to be reckoned with.
The morning of the wedding dawned gray and overcast, mirroring the storm raging within me. As I dressed, a sense of calm washed over me, a strange detachment from the emotions that had consumed me for weeks. I was no longer Camilla, the heartbroken sister. I was someone else entirely, someone with a mission. The dress I had chosen was simple but elegant, a stark contrast to the extravagant gowns I knew Maya and her guests would be wearing. I wanted to blend in, to observe, to gather information, because I had decided what I was going to do. The ceremony was a lavish affair, held at a sprawling estate overlooking the ocean. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the murmur of polite conversation. As I walked through the crowd, I felt like an outsider, a ghost haunting a world that no longer belonged to me. Richard's family greeted me with their usual condescension, their smiles tight and insincere. I simply nodded, offering no response, my eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. Maya, radiant in her designer gown, barely acknowledged me, her attention focused on her guests, on maintaining her perfect image. I watched her from a distance, studying her every move, searching for any sign of remorse, any flicker of recognition. But there was nothing. She was completely absorbed in her own world, oblivious to the pain she had inflicted. As the ceremony began, I found a seat in the back, away from the crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. The vows were a blur, the words meaningless against the backdrop of my own shattered dreams. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a wave of nausea washed over me. This was it, the moment when Maya had officially chosen her new life, a life that excluded me. During the reception, I mingled with the guests, feigning interest in their conversations, all the while gathering information. I listened to their gossip, their complaints, their petty jealousies, piecing together a picture of their shallow, superficial world. I learned about Richard's business dealings, his family secrets, the intricate web of lies and deceit that held their empire together. And I realized that Maya had made a terrible mistake. She had traded her family, her loyalty, her very soul, for a life of empty luxury, a life built on a foundation of sand. The person I trusted most was one of them. As the evening progressed, I noticed Maya and Richard slipping away, heading towards a secluded part of the estate. I followed them, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with possibilities. I found them in a dimly lit garden, arguing in hushed tones. I couldn't hear their words, but I could see the anger on their faces, the tension in their bodies, and I realized that their perfect facade was crumbling, revealing the cracks beneath the surface. This was their weakness. This was their breaking point. They thought they were untouchable. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable.
And that's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I smiled, I acted broken, but I was recording everything. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth. I smiled, I played their game, but I was recording everything. I knew simply exposing their argument in the garden wouldn't be enough. It would be dismissed as a marital spat, a minor disagreement. I needed irrefutable proof of their true characters, their deceit, and their potentially illegal activities. The next few weeks were a delicate dance, a calculated performance designed to lull them into a false sense of security. I continued to attend family gatherings, offering polite conversation and feigning interest in their lives. I even offered Maya my congratulations, showering her with insincere praise, all the while meticulously gathering evidence. I started by focusing on Richard's business dealings. I knew he was involved in some shady investments, but I needed concrete proof. I spent countless hours scouring public records, financial statements, and online forums, piecing together a puzzle of tax evasion, fraud, and money laundering. It was a slow, painstaking process, but I was determined to uncover the truth. To access some of the more secure files, I had to enlist the help of a friend who worked in cybersecurity. I couldn't tell him the full story, but I hinted at corporate wrongdoing and appealed to his sense of justice. He reluctantly agreed to help, using his expertise to bypass security protocols and access confidential information. The files confirmed my suspicions. Richard was a master of deception, using shell corporations and offshore accounts to hide his ill-gotten gains. The evidence was damning, enough to land him in prison for a very long time, but I wasn't finished yet. I also needed to expose Maya's complicity in his crimes. I knew she was aware of his activities, but I needed to prove it. That's when I remembered the $85,000 I had given her for the wedding. I had transferred the funds electronically, leaving a clear paper trail. I contacted my bank, requesting copies of the transaction records. They were initially hesitant, citing privacy concerns, but I persisted, explaining that I suspected fraudulent activity. Eventually, they relented, providing me with the documents I needed. The records showed the exact dates and amounts of the transfers, along with the recipient's account information. This was the smoking gun, proof that Maya had knowingly accepted money derived from illegal activities. With the evidence in hand, I began to formulate my plan. I knew I couldn't simply present the information to the authorities. Richard's family had connections, powerful friends who could bury the evidence and protect him from prosecution. I needed to expose them publicly, to force their hand, to make it impossible for them to escape justice. I decided to create a website, a digital repository of all the evidence I had gathered.
I called it The Price of Silence, a reference to Maya's complicity in Richard's crimes. I meticulously organized the information, presenting it in a clear and concise manner, with supporting documents and irrefutable proof. I also included a detailed account of Maya's betrayal, her cruel message, and her callous disregard for our family. I knew this would be the most damaging part of the exposure, the part that would shatter her perfect image and expose her true character. To ensure the website's security, I hired a team of cybersecurity experts to protect it from hackers and attempts at censorship. They set up multiple layers of encryption and implemented a distributed server network, making it virtually impossible to shut down. I also created several backup copies of the website, stored on secure servers in different countries, ensuring that the information would remain accessible even if the original site was taken down. The next step was to alert the media. I contacted several investigative journalists, providing them with a summary of my findings and promising them exclusive access to the website. Most of them were initially skeptical, but when I showed them a sample of the evidence, they became intrigued. They agreed to investigate the story, promising to publish their findings once they had verified the information. I knew that once the story broke, it would be a media frenzy. Richard's family would try to discredit me, to paint me as a disgruntled sister seeking revenge. That's why I made sure to document everything, to keep a detailed record of all my interactions with them, including their condescending remarks and subtle threats. I also contacted a lawyer, seeking legal advice on how to protect myself from potential lawsuits and retaliatory actions. She advised me to remain anonymous, to communicate only through secure channels, and to avoid any direct contact with Richard and his family. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was necessary to protect myself and my loved ones. As the launch date of the website approached, my anxiety intensified. I knew that I was about to unleash a storm, a tsunami of scandal and recrimination that would engulf Richard and Maya and their entire family. I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Was it worth it to destroy their lives, even if they deserved it? But then I remembered Maya's cruel message, her callous disregard for my feelings, and the sacrifices I had made for her over the years, and I knew that I had no choice. They had betrayed me, and they had to pay the price. On the day of the wedding, I uploaded the website to the internet, triggering the automatic release to the media outlets. The world would know the truth. The day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth.
The Price of Silence website went live at exactly 6 a.m. I watched the server logs in real time as the first hits came in, then dozens, then hundreds. The media outlets picked up the story within minutes, their websites flashing headlines about Richard's financial misdeeds and Maya's involvement. The story went viral instantly. Social media exploded with outrage. News channels interrupted their regular programming to report on the scandal. Richard's family issued a statement denying all allegations, claiming that I was a scorned relative seeking revenge. But the evidence was overwhelming. The documents, the emails, the financial records, they spoke for themselves. Within hours, Richard's business empire began to crumble. His investors pulled out, his partners deserted him, and his reputation was shattered beyond repair. Maya's world also began to unravel. Her friends abandoned her, her social circle ostracized her, and her perfect image was tarnished forever. I watched it all unfold from a safe distance, my emotions a complex mix of satisfaction, guilt, and sadness. I had achieved my goal. I had exposed their true characters and brought them to justice. But the victory felt hollow, the taste of revenge bittersweet. That afternoon, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Camila?" a voice said, a voice I recognized instantly. It was Maya, her voice trembling with anger and despair. "How could you do this to me?" she said, her words laced with venom. "How could you destroy my life?" I remained silent, refusing to engage in her drama. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "I hate you. I will never forgive you." I took a deep breath, steeling myself against her accusations. "You did this to yourself, Maya," I said calmly. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." "This isn't over," she hissed. "I will make you pay for this. You'll regret ever crossing me." And with that, she hung up. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that Maya wouldn't let this go easily. She would retaliate, she would try to destroy me. But I was ready for her. I had anticipated her reaction, and I had taken steps to protect myself. I changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment, and increased my security measures. I also filed a restraining order against Maya and Richard, preventing them from contacting me or coming near me. I knew it wouldn't stop them completely, but it would provide me with some legal protection.
The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media inquiries, and police investigations. Richard was arrested on charges of fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. Maya was also implicated in the crimes, facing charges of conspiracy and aiding and abetting. Their lawyers fought tooth and nail to get them released on bail, but the judge denied their request, citing the overwhelming evidence against them and the risk of them fleeing the country. As Richard and Maya sat in jail awaiting trial, their family rallied around them, vowing to clear their names and expose me as a liar and a manipulator. They hired a team of high-powered lawyers and public relations experts to wage a counteroffensive in the media. They launched a smear campaign, accusing me of being mentally unstable, jealous of Maya's success, and obsessed with revenge. They even tried to dig up dirt on me, searching for any skeletons in my closet that they could use to discredit me. But they found nothing. I had lived a clean life, always striving to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. My conscience was clear, and I had no fear of their attacks. One evening, as I was walking home from work, I noticed a black car following me. I tried to ignore it, but it stayed close, matching my pace, its headlights glaring in my eyes. I quickened my step, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew who it was. It was Richard's family, sending a message. They wanted to intimidate me, to scare me into silence, but I refused to be intimidated. I pulled out my phone and called the police, reporting the suspicious vehicle. The car sped away, disappearing into the night, but I knew they would be back. They wouldn't give up easily. They were desperate to protect their family, their reputation, and their wealth, and they were willing to do anything to achieve their goals. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let my guard down, not for a moment. My apartment was no longer safe. They knew where I lived, and they could come after me at any time. I decided to disappear. I packed a bag, withdrew my savings from the bank, and left town without telling anyone. I drove for hours, not stopping until I reached a small, secluded cabin in the mountains. The cabin was owned by a friend of mine, someone I trusted implicitly. He had offered it to me as a safe haven, a place where I could hide until the storm passed. I spent the next few weeks in isolation, cut off from the outside world. I had no phone, no internet, no television, just the silence of the mountains and the weight of my thoughts. I replayed the events of the past few months in my mind, questioning my decisions, wondering if I had gone too far. But then I remembered Maya's betrayal, her callous disregard for my feelings, and the sacrifices I had made for her over the years. And I knew that I had done what I had to do. I had stood up for myself, I had exposed the truth, and I had brought them to justice. One morning, I woke up to the sound of helicopters overhead. I peered out the window and saw several black SUVs approaching the cabin. It was them. They had found me. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that I was trapped. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They surrounded the cabin, their weapons drawn, their faces grim. This was it, the moment of reckoning, the final showdown. The exact day they tried to end me. The exact day they tried to end me. The helicopters descended, kicking up snow and ice, swirling around the small cabin. I knew escape was impossible. Might as well face them on my own terms. I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and threw it open. Richard's older brother, Marcus, stood at the front, flanked by two men in dark suits. His face was a mask of fury. "Where do you think you're going?" he spat, his voice dripping with malice. I simply smiled. "Nowhere," I replied calmly. "I've been waiting for you." Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my arm, his grip like a vice. "You think you can get away with this? You think you can ruin my family and just disappear?" I didn't flinch. "Your family ruined themselves, Marcus. I just exposed the truth." He shoved me back into the cabin, the two men following close behind. They began searching the small space, tossing furniture, ripping open drawers, clearly looking for something specific. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "The original files," Marcus snarled. "The ones you uploaded to the website. We want them destroyed." I laughed. "You think I'm that naive? I have copies hidden all over the world. Even if you removed me, the truth would still come out." His face turned crimson. He raised his hand to strike me, but one of the men stopped him. "Don't," he said, his voice low and menacing. "We have other ways." They dragged me outside, forcing me into one of the SUVs. As we drove away, I saw the cabin in my rearview mirror. They set it ablaze.
Any evidence that I was ever there, gone. But the digital evidence, untouchable. They took me to a remote location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. They dragged me inside, threw me into a chair, and tied my hands behind my back. Marcus stood over me, his eyes burning with hatred. "You're going to retract your statements," he said. "You're going to tell the world that you lied, that Richard and Maya are innocent." I shook my head. "Never," I replied, my voice defiant. "The truth is the truth, and it will prevail." He sighed, a look of resignation on his face. "I didn't want to do this," he said, "but you leave me no choice." He nodded to one of the men who produced a syringe filled with a clear liquid. My blood ran cold. I knew what they were planning. They were going to silence me, permanently. But even in that moment of terror, I felt a sense of peace. I had done everything I could. I had fought for justice, and I had exposed the truth.
My story would live on. The man approached me with the syringe, his eyes devoid of emotion. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the end. But then, suddenly, the warehouse doors burst open. A swarm of police officers rushed inside, guns drawn. The men in suits were caught completely off guard. Marcus froze, his face a mask of disbelief. "Police, freeze! Drop your weapons!" The officers quickly subdued the men, handcuffing them and leading them away. One of the officers approached me, untying my hands. "Are you all right, Miss Vargas?" he asked. I nodded, my body shaking with adrenaline. "Yes, I'm fine," I replied. "Thank you." It turned out that my friend, the one who owned the cabin, had anticipated that Richard's family would come after me. He had contacted the authorities, providing them with information about their plans. The police had been tracking them for days, waiting for the right moment to intervene. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, he turned to me, his face contorted with rage and defeat. "This isn't over," he screamed. "I will get you for this." I simply smiled. The police investigation into Richard and Maya intensified. The evidence I had provided was irrefutable. They were both charged with multiple felonies, including fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy. Their trial was a media circus. The world watched as their carefully constructed facade crumbled before their eyes. They tried to deny the charges, to blame each other, to plead for leniency. But the evidence was overwhelming. They were found guilty on all counts. Richard was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Maya received a 15-year sentence. Their assets were seized, their reputation was ruined, and their lives were destroyed. They lost everything. I watched the news reports from a safe distance, my emotions a complex mix of relief, sadness, and satisfaction. I had achieved my goal. I had brought them to justice. But the victory felt hollow, the taste of revenge bittersweet. The pain of their betrayal would always linger, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their perfect lives. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's a shield against further pain, a statement that you will not be a victim. It's a reckoning that can finally allow you to move on. I rebuilt my life, stronger and more resilient than before. I surrounded myself with genuine friends, people who loved and supported me for who I was, not for what I could offer them. I found peace and happiness, knowing that I had done the right thing, even though it was difficult. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.